Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today, on the heels of the new Netflix documentary that came out, I'm going to be talking about this guy. Well, I'm going to be talking about both of these people. This is Jens Soering. All right. And the whole Netflix documentary is really about him. And the question is that the documentary is kind of putting out there. It doesn't want to say exactly this or exactly that, but they want to leave it in the hands of the viewers. And the question is he innocent of murder? Was he compelled to murder? Or was he equal partners with Elizabeth Haysom over here of killing her parents here? All right, so it's very fascinating. And what I really want to get into is the psychology of this case and a thing called folie à deux. All right, which basically means insanity between two people. And I want to discuss all of that, discuss who is the leader, who is the follower, and what kind of psychological problems did they have or do they have, and who actually did kill them. Was it him alone? Was it her alone? Or did they both go there together? Okay, so it's going to be quite interesting, and I'm fascinated by the concept that we have of when you have two people who meet, who otherwise may have gone on in their lives and never committed a crime, or at least not as horrifying a crime as homicide. But when they get together, things don't go so well, and they feed off of each other, and then they can get to this point where they commit horrific crimes. And we see this quite often with teenage couples, whether they be male-female or male-male or female-female, it doesn't really matter. And I'm not talking about serial killers. There's a whole different thing. Sometimes you'll have duos in serial killing, which is very different than when you have the couple actually killing one of their relatives, somebody they want to get out of the way. Very different situation. So I'm going to get into all of that. I want to welcome everybody who's in the chat room. And I think I've said hello to everybody, but if I haven't, welcome. Linda's now here. I haven't said hello to you yet, I know. And Benny just rolled in. Oh, no. Not Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo. They're serial killers. And they're a duo. But it's very different from this, where you have the focus is on one crime and one person they want to get out of their lives related to one of those people. So that is the difference between Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo and a folie à deux situation. So some people will say that there is the same thing. I've seen that listed, that a duo serial killer is folie à deux because one of them is a leader and one of them is a follower. I don't agree with that. I mean, anytime you have two people hanging out together and interested in the same thing, yes, you might have a leader and a follower, but I don't think that it's just not the same thing. Okay. I don't put that in the same category. And the claim is, well, if they hadn't met, like Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka, who are serial killers from Canada, if you don't know, married, that if they hadn't met, they wouldn't have been serial killers. Well, Paul Bernardo was already a rapist, so I'm pretty sure he would just move right on into serial killing. Would Carla Homolka have become a serial killer helper if she hadn't met Paul Bernardo? Well, she did offer her own sister to Paul, so she was a pretty nasty piece of work. So, you you could still be a psychopath and then commit other crimes. And yes, it's true, you may get together with somebody and commit serial homicides, which you might not have done. So some people consider that folie à deux, that they're insanity together, but I still see that as different. I'm interested in folie à deux when it comes down to two people who kill a person close to them, usually a parent, in order to do something, get that person out of their life so they can be together. And I said, well, get into all of that. A similar case would be, let me pull it up here. a similar case would be this one, which I did a show on, Not So Heavenly Creatures, the Parker Hume murders, the Parker Hume murder. These two girls met. They were lovers they were very young, but lovers in school. And one of the girls' mothers, they felt, would not let one of the girls go with the other girl to another country, essentially. And so they decided to kill that mother so that they would have that freedom to be together. That was a case, what they call folie à deux. And I'm going to use this as an explanation for why I think this case is so similar, because I think a lot of people have the leader backwards. So anyway, by the way, if you would like to be in this chat room, please do click on the link below. Hold on a second. There it is. The link below in the description is a link to Patreon that really helps support the channel. It's $5 a month. You can come to all 8 lives and be part of the chat room. And it's great. We have such a wonderful community. And if you don't want to do that, please do just subscribe to the channel, check my playlist. And if you're interested in any case, go to the search engine in YouTube and put in Profiler Pat Brown and whatever you're interested in. Click the button and you'll see if I've done the show already. Okay, so otherwise, to support the channel, my books are below and little dollar signs are below. Anything to support the channel, because YouTube keeps making it difficult for us, folks. So anyway, let's get to this case. I want to read you the basics of the case, because some people have no clue about this case, even because they didn't get to watch Netflix or they don't live in the area I live in. I live in Maryland, which is right next door to the state of Virginia in the US, where this case happened. So first, I'm going to read. It's interesting. If you go to YouTube, Wikipedia, he's got a Wikipedia page, and people make Wikipedia pages for people. Sometimes people think that they themselves have put the Wikipedia page up, so they call it their Wikipedia page. I have a Wikipedia page. I never put that page up. I don't even know who did it, but it's up there. It's got a reasonable amount of information, and then there were things I found that were not correct on it. And so recently I went back and I wondered why everybody was saying I only had a bachelor's degree. And then I looked at my Wikipedia page. I'm like, oh, that's why. So I actually went in and added my master's, because I'm tired of people saying I never got a master's. But they didn't necessarily put their own Wikipedia page up. Other people do that, and it supposedly is checked for veracity of at least a reasonable sort. But they have 2 different ones, which is quite interesting. I'm going to start with Jens's so I can explain the case quickly. And it's got much interesting information about this guy on it. So here is the case as it goes. All right. In 1990, he was convicted in Virginia, the United States of America, of murdering the parents of then girlfriend Elizabeth Haysom. For her role in the deaths, Haysom was convicted of 2 counts of accessory before the fact to murder. All right. The basic concept here is that she wanted her parents dead, and they had this very, very strong love affair, and he was obsessed with her and she was obsessed with him. She kept saying, her parents ruining her life and all that. And then they concocted a plan. She encouraged him, to get rid of her parents, and they concocted a plan, and they left town and went from Virginia to Washington, D.C., and set up an alibi up there. And then as the court case went on, she stayed up there to keep the alibi going, and he jumped in the rental car and went back to Virginia, killed her parents, and then drove back to the hotel in Washington, D.C. And they were not immediate suspects. So unfortunately, that did mess things up, because they were out of town. So the police were looking locally. So unfortunately, some of the evidence was not collected that could have been collected. They became suspects I think it was 6 months later, something like that, but not right away. And so meanwhile, they went on about their business, went back to school, and when they became suspect, they ran the country and started running around the world. And they eventually ended up in England, where they committed frauds, and they got caught for that. And while the police were checking through the luggage, they found some interesting information about their connection to Virginia. And the guy from London called Virginia and said, hey, I think I got your killers here. And they're like, what? And so that's how they got eventually into court. Now you can watch the movie. Let me give you some information where I got my information from and what you can get your information from. All right. Till Murder Do Us Part is Soering versus Haysom, meaning that eventually he said they convicted him of killing the parents. They convicted her of helping plan it. And later on, he said he didn't do it, and she actually did it. So this is where the versus comes from. So you can watch the Netflix. I think it's three episodes long. I like the fact they did a lot of stuff in the courtroom, and the courtroom stuff was quite amusing. And so, yeah, that was the best part. Do I have a picture of the courtroom here? Yeah. So here they are in courtroom. This is her in the courtroom. And this is when she said something, and he's like, and so it's a funny part in the thing. He's like, how could you do that? And but it's very interesting to watch the two of them give their stories in court and see how each one of them behaves. So it's actually very fascinating. So it's an interesting documentary. Now, oddly enough, after the documentary aired, which supposedly they paid this guy a lot of money to be in it, and I don't know how much money that was, but he now has his own YouTube channel, and he has these reaction videos like this one. Jens Soering, 20 pieces of evidence missing in the Netflix series. And so I guess he got his money and then he still complained. But I don't know what he got paid to do this. But anyway, he has his Netflix, he has his whole channel here and he's proclaiming his innocence and so on and so forth. And he also did so in a book called A Far, Far Better Thing. He wrote this book about his innocence, that the only reason he ever confessed to this crime was because he was trying to keep the woman he loved from going to prison and getting the death penalty. And he thought now this is where it's a claim. They say he believed, but no. There was a claim that he believed that because he was the son of a diplomat, he wouldn't go to prison, to be sent back to Germany, where his family was from. But he knew better. So I called a claim and not he to believe that. That's just a bunch of nonsense. But that's what he claimed. Oh, and then the reason I confessed earlier on was because I wanted to save the love of my life. So then he wrote this book about all his innocence. I did not pay for this book because I got enough information about everything he's ever said through all kinds of other documentation. I don't need to give him money. I don't know if he can get money. Son of Sam Law, but he's making money somewhere. He is. He's very popular now. He's got lots of people supporting him, thinking he's totally innocent. And this fellow, Andrew Hamill, I actually accidentally put the show up as public, which I know, it's always patron only for the live part. All my shows go public eventually. 1 week later, they're all public, so everybody can see them. But my live shows are patron only, so that I have noise chat rooms without people coming in and disturbing things. Not you, Andrew. If you had come in, it would have been okay. But at any rate, Andrew Hamill saw the public one because I accidentally put it up public, and he contacted me and he emailed and said, oh, by the way, I see you're going to do the show. And so I learned about him, and I learned he had this book called Martyr or Murderer. Jens Soering, The Media and the Truth. And Andrew, first of all, I want to say I bought the book. I read it entirely last night in its entirety, and I recommend it highly. I'll link it below. Well-written book. He also has websites, so I'll link that as well, because I think he has a tremendous amount of information out there, way more than I will give you. Okay, so you really want to get into this case. You really want to see all the details. He has a massive amount of information. And I also will link a couple things he linked elsewhere so that I can put it, the stuff that's acceptable that's public, I'll link below. There's some things I'm not going to link, which are private. Hold on 1 second. Yes.
I'm here, Boo-Boo.
What? No, she's upstairs.
My house?
Yes.
Okay.
Bye. It's a live show. My granddaughter's upstairs. I'm downstairs, making sure she's okay. And now her grandfather showed up to say, Where is she? Where's Boo Boo? She's upstairs. Okay, live show. I'm not editing, but I'm glad he's home, so I don't have to worry about it. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. So anyway, so I read his book. I think it's everything about. I want you to go and check out his stuff. So thank you, Andrew. Really good stuff. And so that's where I got my information from, and a bunch of other places. All right. So let me see if I can read you anything else here. Okay. So after he was, let's go with this guy. After he was convicted of murdering the parents of his then girlfriend, and so he got convicted of the actual murder. She got convicted of 2 counts of accessory before the fact to murder. So in prison, Soering claimed he was not guilty. After 14 parole requests and numerous petitions for a gubernatorial pardon, all unsuccessful, he was released on probation and deported to Germany in 2019. So what happened in 2019 is that Virginia actually released both of them. And Elizabeth went back to Canada. He went back to Germany. And so they are free after many, many years, 30 some years. Now Soering appears on talk shows, has an exclusive contract with Netflix, and uses his case in the media. All right. So he has gone on to become a celebrity, and he's got quite a number of people. Of course, Hollywood is always involved, and they're like, oh, we think he's innocent. And she, on the other hand, kept a low profile in prison. She gave one interview only while she was in prison. She studied stuff. He studied a lot of stuff in prison too, but he spent most of his time studying how to prove he's innocent. She accepted her guilt, and she did other stuff in prison that was just, educational stuff and helpful stuff. Nothing to do with her case at all. Her family has asked the Haysom family has asked her to keep quiet, and she has respected that. So two very different trajectories after they got incarcerated. Now, one could say, well, if he's totally innocent, didn't do it, and she committed the crime and he covered for her, why shouldn't he fight for people to understand he's innocent? There's a truth in that. So I'm going to get into who actually killed the Haysoms. Did he do it alone? Did she do it alone? Did they do it together? Or what? Did he do it while she was present at the house? There's all kinds of theories on this kind of thing. And so I'm going to get into that in a little bit. So anyway, that's the basics of this. So as far as the crime goes, let me just tell you just a tiny bit about the crime, because, I don't do stories, so I don't go into great depth on that. But so anyway, they were up in Washington, D.C., and they had rented a car, and they bought tickets to go to the theater, and room service was ordered at the hotel. And the concept being that would prove they were in Washington, D.C. and not killing off these people. And back in the day when this occurred, it wasn't like you ran a credit card and it came in at an exact time, or so the tickets are fairly meaningless. You could buy them and then just never go to the movie. You could order room service and still it wouldn't say what time the room service appeared. And I don't know whether they believed that the police would check them out and it'd be, hey, look, he kept all this stuff. He kept the tickets and everything. It's like he was waiting. It's like, it's our alibi. But you have to wonder right there. When I go out of town and get tickets to movie theater, I do not keep those tickets. Now maybe if I went to a great Broadway show and I paid a few $100s to go see the stupid thing like Lion King or something, and had this fancy ticket, I might keep that ticket, one of the souvenir things. But, a ticket to a local movie theater which somebody rips in half, I'm hardly keeping that thing around. So why does he have that? And so it appeared to the courts that these two had planned that they were going to set up an alibi in Washington, D.C., and then that car went down to the funny thing about it was that the car had way too much mileage on it. So in other words, they rented the car, supposedly went to Washington, D.C. and came back. But the car had a huge amount of few hundred extra miles on it. In other words, then somebody drove 4 hours south and then 4 hours back north. That's why all this extra mileage. They claim they got lost for 400, like what, how many miles? you got lost for 400 miles? Or, I mean, that was craziness. So that's what perked up the police and said, whoa, something fishy about this. But they had set up this alibi, at least theoretically, that's what happened in Washington, D.C. And one of them or both of them drove down to Virginia, killed these two, and drove back. Okay? Those are the basics. This is the house that they were killed in. All right. And this is a drawing of the room. It's this, the house is called Loose Chippings, and those, give a house a name thing. And the kitchen is on the left. That's where the mom was found. And over there between the door of the dining room and the living room is where the father was found. Okay. Now, interesting enough, see, you just have to understand, Jens did confess to the crime like 4 times before he claimed he didn't do it. And he actually sketched this out as to where the bodies were, which kind of made the police think he did it, along with a very long explanation of how he killed them, which all matched the scene. So the reason he confessed at a certain point was that he felt that they had him against the wall. They had him from something from the scene. And so that's why he confessed, giving great details as to what happened at the house. So there's not a question that an outsider killed these two. Some people come and say, no, neither one of them did it. They just were lost, driving around in circles, and some other bums from the town came in and killed them, took nothing, stole nothing, and left. No. Okay. We know it has to do with these two. So that's not an issue. So he gives a complete description of what occurred in the house and how he killed these two. All right. So that's a little suspicious, one would think. This is the room that all supposedly started in. I'm not, of course, I don't show tons of crime scene pictures. I won't show any pictures of the bodies. And so, but this is the room. It's this dining room. So it's supposedly the mom and dad were having some food. He had come to the house. This is his claim. He knocked on the door. They invited him in. He hung out with them a little bit, had a drink with them while they were eating and having ice cream. And then they pissed him off by saying he shouldn't be with their daughter. So he jumped up and took out a knife and started killing them. All right. Now, one thing I see that's not addressed in anywhere, which it really amuses me. Nobody addresses this. He gives a story about what happened at the scene, that he went down, one of his claims is he went down there to talk to them, to say, hey, I want to be with your daughter. That was one of the claims. I just want to be with your daughter. And then they did invite him in. And clearly they did open the door to somebody who came in. They shut the door and they were sitting at the table. So that's why it's not a stranger. It's either him or both of them or her. Somebody they let in to sit at the table. And then that person attacked them while they were sitting at the table, got up behind him and, all right. So, and then attacked this guy first, because, you go for the biggest guy first, the biggest threat if you're going to try to contain 2 people. Now, some people say, well, there had to be 2 of them because there were 2 of them. Not necessarily so. I mean, so somebody got behind him and then he started trying to, fight back, and he's already losing blood. And she supposedly, the claim is that she picked up a knife and tried to run at him. And then, so anyway, they both got attacked a lot. So let me show you, the, this is the autopsy stuff. So both of them had their throats cut. They got stabbed up a lot too. Front and back. He got stabbed up way more than she did. Okay. Now, going back to here. Now, the thing I want to say, the reason I get amused by the story he told and why nobody questions it. His claim is that he was talking with them and then they pissed him off by saying things like, you shouldn't be with my daughter, you're not good enough, blah, blah, blah. Every person who commits these kind of murders will blame the victim or the victims. In other words, they had to do something to spur him into that moment, you see, which also goes well for not being first degree. In other words, not premeditated. I didn't mean to kill them. I went there to talk to them and they pissed me off. And in that moment, I lost my damn mind. And I just happened to have a knife with me. And, and I just couldn't keep myself from, because they pissed me off, told me I couldn't be with the woman I love. How do we know any of that happened? I'm going to say he's lying like a dog. I'm going to say they never probably said any of those things. They may have let him in. He might have said, Elizabeth I dropped her off at her friend's house. She's going to come over here in about an hour. This would be my take on it. And so that's why they let him in, because they thought the friend was going to drop the daughter off, or whatever the story was. So he sat down with them, had a drink with them. And then when it was convenient, when they weren't expecting it, he just jumped up and attacked this guy. They didn't have to piss him off because it was a premeditated homicide. So, but the story that a lot of these killers give is, I wasn't planning to kill them, because it takes it down from first degree to second degree. Hey, anything you can to get a lesser crime. You know what I mean? So that was, I don't believe his story about what happened at the house. And I've always seen this quoted as if it were fact. We know nothing about what happened in the house from the time he entered the door to the time he left. We do not know what either of those parents said or did. Absolutely nothing. So let's not say that there was an argument or any insults or anything put. We do not know. And he's a lying dog. So we don't know. But somebody came in there and cut their throats, stabbed them up, and left them for dead. Now, here was one of the things that got him in trouble. And this is a fascinating part of the case. This is a sock print, not a shoe print. And it's very unusual at a scene to have a sock print. And supposedly the sock print matched his size of the foot, although the defense argues that terribly and says it wasn't his sock print. It's her sock print or some other guy's sock print. But my question was, before I learned more about this case, why would there be a sock print? I mean, who kills people with socks on? So it's funny because I did actually ask my new friend with his excellent book, Android. I emailed him. I said, by the way, do they have a rule at that house, the Haysom house, that you should leave your shoes at the door and walk in with bare feet? Or sock feet or whatever. Because I have a lot of Indian friends, and every Indian family I know, you leave your shoes at the door and you don't wear shoes in the house. You just don't do that. And in my house, because I had white rugs, I always said people leave your shoes at the door. And a whole bunch of people didn't listen. So I'm less picky now because I just need new rugs, a new carpet. But it was 10 years of white carpet, but I also take off my shoes at the front door. I never wear shoes in a house. And I do it in a lot of people's houses, even when they don't request it. I'm just so used to it. I just get to the front door and take my shoes off. So I asked Andrew, is there any information at that house whether they wore shoes in the house? And he sent me over a crime scene photo with Mrs. Haysom, and she was killed with shoes on her feet. So the answer to that is no, that wasn't a thing. And you wonder, why did he even ask that question? Well, because I have not seen too many crime scenes with sock feet. I'm like, what the heck? Who runs around killing people without their shoes on? That just really struck me. And this is one of the biggest points of this whole case. Well, when he gave his explanation about how he committed the crime, what he said was he went in, he goes in with shoes on, mind you. He says he killed them. Then he leaves. He tries to clean up things. He tries to smear stuff around, so cover up footprints and cover up handprints. He also cut himself, so he was trying to cover up all kinds of crap. So anyway, he leaves. He drives away. He says he hit a dog. He thought he hit a dog, and he's really upset about hitting a dog because, two dead people are not a big deal, but a doggy, well, So he's worried about the dog. Interesting statement. I don't know. Is that supposed to show he had some empathy? Well, maybe his empathy for dogs. We don't have empathy for human beings, apparently. So anyway, he claims that he went and got rid of his clothing because they was full of blood. His pants, his shirt, he's chucking stuff in dumpster, right? And the shoes. So now he's in a sock feet. But then he realizes, oh my God, there were lights on at the house. Lights on inside, lights on outside, people are going to notice this, and like they never went to sleep or whatever. Why the light's still blazing? So he went back to the house and entered the house in his sock feet, in his stocking feet. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating, because that does explain why then it would have a sock print and not a shoe print. What's more interesting is that that was the story he gave without knowing that somebody rolled around in that house with socks on their feet. So I don't know how anybody thinks this guy didn't do it. Seriously, I don't care how many stories he gives. He was just covering for his girlfriend. She went and killed him, and he was just back up there in Washington, D.C., buying those tickets up, and she's down there killing her parents. But his sock prints are there, and he tells his exact story. Now, the claim is, well, she could have told him the story, and therefore he's just borrowing her story. Oh, get out of here. I mean, his story is too much of his story about the actual killing, and when going back to the house. There was another issue about that he turned off the inside lights, but the outside light remained on because there was a switch that was in the master bedroom, which was really weird, and he wouldn't know where it is. She would know where it is, so if she went back and wanted to turn all the lights off, she could go into the master bedroom, but he wouldn't have a clue. I'm not that big on that, because quite frankly, a lot of people leave their outside lights on even when the inside lights are off. So that's one of those things I kind of toss away. But he confessed many times, and then he got convicted on what he had told the police, that he committed the crime and that she had encouraged him to commit the crime, but she was not there. But later on, he claims that, no, he was just covering for her. She actually was the one who drove to Virginia. Her parents let her in. She killed her father and her mother, even though their father was a big guy. She had the ability to kill him, and her mom, and came back. And some people think, well, she was the one that was more emotionally connected to them. Therefore, she did it, and he's covering. But from the very beginning, she confessed that she believed that she encouraged him to kill her parents. And very early, he confessed that he did kill her parents. The stories align until later. After he gets convicted, he's like, whoa, I didn't do it. It's like, now you say that. So, yeah, I'm going to say this guy did it. There's zero evidence she was ever there. Now, there is one other thought, that after they got the tickets done, and they got the room service, which could have been at 4:00 in the afternoon, that both of them drove back. A lot of people believe this. Both of them drove there, and she was there. There's some reasons for that. He was making a statement once, and he said, "Our trip," as opposed to "my trip." So it's so it was our trip down there. And there were some cigarette butts outside, and she was a smoker. And people think, well, her mom would have cleaned up, therefore there shouldn't be cigarette butts down there unless it was that night. Which is interesting, which I'll guarantee I kind of find that interesting. Our trip I find interesting. The cigarette butts on the ground I find interesting. And the fact that she could have gone down with him. She could have, and they could have gone in together, and she could have said, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. She could have walked out, and that could have been the moment where she goes, that's the sign that he's supposed to kill him. I'm going to step outside, and you take care of it. Possible. Overly probable, not necessarily so. And I'm going to explain why I don't think this probably didn't happen. If it did, she still didn't kill them. He still killed them. She just stepped out the door and let him do whatever. But I don't think there's evidence, because those cigarette butts could have been there for another anyway. He could have just made a faux pas. He could have just said our trip because he was talking about it was their trip to Washington, D.C. It was on our trip. It's one of those things you can start assigning meaning to, which may not have meaning. So let's not go overboard on it. But it's interesting. It's something to consider. So do I think it's possible she went with him and stepped outside while he committed the crime, and then they came back together? It's possible. I don't think it's necessarily the likely story, because neither one of them had anything close to that story to begin with. And she could have easily said, I was there and I stepped outside and he lost his mind. she could have given that story and it wouldn't make it much difference. You know what I mean? We went to see my parents together and I went to have a cigarette and there must have been an argument inside. Actually, that might have been better than we set up a whole alibi up in Washington, D.C. So I don't find that it was, if she had actually been there, she needed to fake that. I mean, I don't know that that's a necessity. So I don't believe it. I think she was back in D.C. and he went on down to Virginia. So I will stand strong that he is guilty as heck. He committed the crime. She was up there. She helped with an alibi of sorts up there in D.C. So I'm going to get into now, I'll go check your comments, but what I want to get into now is the psychology of both of them. Who had the power in the relationship? The folie à deux. What does it actually mean? How does this apply to them? Who is more culpable and who is more responsible for this crime? Which one of these guys? Okay, even if he committed the actual murders, did he do it because he couldn't help himself because of her? Was she a femme fatale that got him to do it because he lost his mind in his love for her? Or is that not exactly accurate? So I'm going to check your comments and then I'm going to go on to the issues of the psychology. All right. Well, okay, I don't think I can check all your comments. There's like, how many? Wait a minute, hold on a second. There's like 700. Whoa, okay. All right. Kelly says, the female had the power. She lured him like a temptress. Interesting thought. Interesting. All right. I believe the girl was a puppet master. That's Benny. Sarah says, evil woman. Oh, we have a whole bunch of people who are definitely in the side of she was a femme fatale and she controlled him and he was a schmuck. All right. They were pre-purchased. It was totally meaningless. That's why it didn't work out. It would only work out if the police had immediately investigated them up in DC and somebody had remembered seeing them at a particular time attending the movie. Other than that, it was truly meaningless. Let's see. I thought it odd, Kelly says, that the father would let this kid get right behind him at the dinner table unless it was extremely quick. The one thing about this guy, he's a slick talker. If you watch the documentary or any of his own channel, he's a slick talker, very slick. And that's a sign, one of the signs of psychopathy is that you're able to schmooze well and do these kind of things so that people fall for what you're saying, at least long enough for what you want to do. So yeah, it could happen. Let's see. Susanna says, I thought the same thing about the cigarettes. The mother wouldn't let them there for days and not pick them up. As far as the cigarettes go, I still don't know where they were. Okay. I'm not exactly sure how many cigarette butts, where the cigarette butts were at, whether they were like sitting on the doorstep, whether they were in a corner. She did live there. I mean, it was her home. You know what I mean? She could have easily smoked another day and nobody saw it for a week. So I don't even know the validity of the cigarette issue. I think they had help. So I think they had some help. Let's see. I think her comments about him being impotent made him change his mind on his guilt. Kelly, the interesting thing about the story is supposedly before the murders, he wasn't too good at getting it up. And after the murders, he became a man. So that's an interesting thing. And so again, how true that was? As far as the key issue goes, it doesn't matter who had a key. It wasn't like he slid in there, snuck in there and surprised them. It was pretty clear that somebody sat down at the table with them. So it wasn't, nobody was like, oh my God, and jumped out of their chairs and ran at him and said, what are you doing here? And they got killed in the hallway. The attack happened at the dining table. So clearly he was let in, or whomever was let in, and that person sat there with them and then attacked them. So, Kelly says the two of them are sure living in some alternate reality. Holy smokes. Could he have taken off the shoes as he slipped in blood? No, he claimed he threw the shoes away and came back in later. He actually stated he returned and went in with stocking feet, which is why I find that absolutely one of the biggest clues that he did it. Because who would even think that? I didn't even think that. That's why I was asking. That's why I was asking Andrew. Sorry, Andrew. I just got to get your name straight. I've only known you for a day, and I have a memory like a sieve when it comes to names. Andrew. All right, there we go. So that's why I asked him this question before I had done more reading, because I thought it was very weird. That's not a normal thing you see at a crime scene. I mean, it's normal if the people live in there and, you have there's a fight between husband and wife and one of them kills the other. You might have stocking feet, but not for somebody arriving and knocking at a door. Who comes in with their stocking feet? No, they don't. They come in with their shoes, take their shoes off, or they keep their shoes on. But when he said, I went back to the thing after he'd gotten rid of throwing his shoes off because they were full of blood, he walks in with his stocking feet because he didn't want shoe prints that would match his shoes. Fascinating. I mean, I'm like, I wouldn't even have thought of that myself. So probably because you did it, because you did it. All right. I want to talk about these two now. All right. We have two personalities, and what do we have? What would inspire the whole issue that I was talking about, which is called, and I'm trying to pronounce it properly, folie à deux. Folie à deux. Okay. Now, I practice this before the show, and then by the time the show comes, I can't pronounce it anymore. I'm like, crap, I forgot what it was. Anyway, I want to point out the folie à deux. And what is that? Well, it's quite fascinating, actually. Now, I want to point out that originally it was in the DSM. All right. Now, if you don't know what the DSM is, it's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, first published by the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, in 1952. It is now in its 5th edition. Oh, it's 5 now. Okay. But at the time of completing Mortal Thoughts, that was another, was that his book? I can't remember now. The relevant version was DSM-4. While highly regarded by many in the profession, the manual is also not without controversy and fierce criticism, and notably included homosexuality as a mental disorder until 1974. Now, the DSM, now 5, I'm not fond of it. They change their minds all the time. So I have been attacked. I can't tell you how many times I've been attacked. Well, Pat Brown, you're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And if those who know, the DSM-5 now says this. Well, yeah, it says this, but it didn't say that last year. And last year it said something different and they just dumped it. So obviously it's not something absolute. It is an opinion of a group of people, whoever those group of people are who write this book. And the DSM has gone through so many versions. They've had times when they've added like 50 different mental conditions, and then I've tossed 30 of them. It's an ongoing project which changes all the time. And as long as you're a part of the field, people don't seem to mind you're changing things. But when somebody from the outside says something, they go, you don't know what you're talking about because the DSM. I'm like, but the DSM said something different yesterday. So anyway, let's talk about this folie à deux. All right. It started out with French psychiatrists Jean-Pierre Ferré and Ernest Charles Leseg. I'm sure that is not properly pronounced. First described shared psychotic disorder, or folie à deux, in 1877, referring to delusional beliefs that transfer from a primary individual to one or more individuals. All right. So the concept is one person has a psychotic, and I find the psychotic thing incorrect right there. For a long time, the idea was that if you weren't thinking correctly, you were psychotic. Well, that doesn't make you psychotic. Psychotic means you have no clue of reality. If you think there are people watching you from inside your TV, that might be psychotic. If you think that aliens have landed, might not be psychotic. No. But if aliens are controlling your body and putting in metal in your brain, whatever, you might be psychotic. But just because you view reality in a way other people don't view it doesn't mean you're wrong. You know? Uh, so there's an interesting problem with that. That sometimes when you're paranoid, as they say, you have a reason to be paranoid. So somebody has a viewpoint. And let's go back to the folie à deux with this couple in the Parker Hume murder. Now, in the Parker Hume murder, let me go to that for just a second and explain the Parker Hume murder just really quickly. Where'd it go? Okay, and you can go check it's going to be linked below. So what happened in the not that one, Parker Hume murder was basically this. There were two teenage girls, Pauline Parker and her friend Juliet Hume. Parker was 16 and Hume was 15. What happened was that they were having this very torrid love affair, though Hume later claimed she didn't have that. That wasn't quite that, which it seemed like it was. At any rate, they had this huge friendship, and when Hume had to move, they were going to be separated. So Hume was going to go to South Africa, and this was in, let's see, okay, this whole thing took place in New Zealand. Okay, so they were in New Zealand, but one of the girls Hume was going to go to South Africa, which would destroy their relationship, right? So they decided that Parker's mother, the other girl, her mother wouldn't let her go. That Hume's mother wouldn't care if she joined them, but the other mother wouldn't let her go. So consequently, they made a decision to kill Parker's mother, and they did. They bludgeoned her to death, and they were caught, and that was the end of that. And eventually, this is an interesting point, which I'm going to point out here right now. Let me get this picture out from behind me because it's distracting me, because I'm not talking about just exactly that yet. So let me go back here. It's just I don't have Parker Hume pictures. Oh, sorry, but anyway. So what happened after they killed Parker's mother? They got arrested. All right. Parker, whose mother was killed, was given a new identity, and she spent some time in New Zealand under close surveillance before being allowed to leave for England. She lived in a small village there, and she ran a children's riding school. As an adult, she became a devout Roman Catholic. While she has never spoken to the press, keep this in mind, Parker never spoke to the press. She only spoke to the press once. She expressed strong remorse for having killed her mother. She also expressed strong remorse for what she did to her parents. Her sister further stated, Pauline committed the most terrible crime and has spent 40 years repaying it by keeping away from people and doing her own little thing. She did the same. When she was in prison, she basically just did things very on the quiet. She kept out of the public eye. Not so much with him. So, after it happened, she was very sorry about it. It took her 5 years to realize what she had done. So in the Parker Hume thing, Parker, whose mother was the one killed, she was the remorseful one. She was the one who felt guilt. Hume, who helped her kill her mother, like this guy helped kill her parents. Hume, after her release from prison, she spent time in England and the United States, later settling in Scotland, becoming a successful historical detective novelist under her new name, Anne Perry. If you read any books, Anne Perry writes a whole bunch of books. She had been a member, of the church, and until 1994, it was not well known that Perry was also Hume. She stated that her relationship with Parker was obsessive. They were not lesbians, which is probably a lie. But anyway, Hume never expressed any remorse for what happened to her girlfriend's mother that she helped kill. He's never expressed a shred of remorse for what happened to her parents. Yet she has. What does this mean? So we have a folie à deux in these two cases. In both of these cases, which I find fascinating, the persons whose parent got killed or parents got killed were the ones with remorse and kept out of the public eye and had guilt. The one who helped kill the person, the parent or parents, didn't feel any remorse. Now, you would think, this is what I find interesting, you would think that if the person who is unhappy with their parents and they were killed, they would be the ones with no remorse. And the person who killed somebody else's parents would feel like a dirtbag. Like, what was I thinking? Why would I do that? I mean, I was so in love. I killed her parents. He should be feeling massive remorse and guilt. Not a shred. Same thing with the Parker Hume situation. Parker's mother was killed. She spent the rest of her life in regret and guilt. Hume, who became Anne Perry and wrote lots of books, didn't seem to care that she killed another girl's mother. It wasn't even her own mother. She didn't have a lifetime of problems with her mother. I mean, that's one thing. If your mother has been mean and miserable to you, I can see why you might want to do her in. But, I meet somebody and I've only known them for a year. Why would I go kill their parent just because? He hardly knew her that long. He goes and cuts the throats of her parents and stabs them like 20, 30 times. And he doesn't feel any guilt, no remorse. Like, I hardly knew these people. I believed her. I went and killed these people. He's not saying anything like that. Of course, now he's saying she did it and I didn't do it at all. But he doesn't feel any remorse. She does. So what does that mean in a folie à deux situation? And I'm seeing the same thing true in both of these crimes. All right, because we're not talking about it like Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. Neither one of them felt guilt about anything, because both of them were total psychopaths who got into a hobby together where they enjoyed killing. Neither one of them felt bad about a damn thing because they're both psychopaths. Are they both psychopaths? This is an interesting question. All right. I want to tell you a little bit about her life, and then I want to tell you a little bit about his life. All right. So her life growing up, she grew up, here we go. No, that's not it. Okay, there we go. All right. She grew up, this is her dad. That's with her dad. This is her dad and mom. They were kind of socialites, very wealthy, pretty much extremely wealthy. He had a great business. He was a brilliant businessman. She was more of a socialite type person. She had some really weird issues. She drank a lot. I don't know if she was an alcoholic, but could be. There's claims that she molested her daughter, that she took nude pictures of her daughter, and some of that seems to be true. What happened to her appears to me, and she was psychoanalyzed. And oddly enough, Jens didn't really get a proper analysis. I'll read you what his analysis is in a bit, but her analysis came back as borderline personality disorder, which I think is 100% accurate. And this time I do agree with the psychologist who came up with that. Borderline personality disorder. Now, what does that exactly mean? All right, let me read you a little bit about that. When she was growing up, she was shunted off to boarding schools. She had a very strange relationship with her parents. They were highly controlling, but she was also a very difficult person. So here's what she had, which is what borderline personality disorder means. Persons with borderline personality disorder, and I'm accidentally saying bipolar because BPD seems to be going for both of them. They should come up with a better way. But persons with BPD, borderline personality disorder, are often uncertain about their identity. As a result, their interests and values can change rapidly. She was all over the map. She was jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing. Nothing seemed to settle with her. She didn't know who she was. They tend to view things in terms of extremes, either all good or all bad. And they go bouncing back and forth with those concepts. Their view of other people can change quickly. She was madly in love with Jens, and then she could care less. She would want to be with him excessively, and then she wanted to go get an apartment and have him stay away. She wanted to be with her parents, and then she didn't want to be with her parents. She was like a ball, just like a pinball machine, just bouncing everywhere. For example, one person who was looked up to one day may then be looked down the next day. These sudden shifting feelings often lead to intense and unstable relationships. She had a very unstable relationship with her parents. She had actually run off for 4 months, gone off to Europe because she didn't want to do what they wanted her to do. And she had a girlfriend with her who she had a relationship with, I think a sexual one. But anyway, they ran around Europe for a while until I guess she went broken. And then she came back. And then she'd go to school and do well, but it was back and forth with these people. If you read some of the stuff online, you'll see all the details of all of this. Other borderline personality disorder symptoms include intense fear of being abandoned. That's why I believe she clung to Jens. She was a fairly attractive woman. She had a reasonable amount of money, but she had issues with her parents, and I think the boarding schools. She was dumped in boarding schools and felt her parents had put her there. At 10 years old, she was already in boarding school in another country. She claimed she was raped there by 2 men. I don't know if that's any true. She had a tendency to exaggerate. One could call it pathological lying, which was why some people think she's a psychopath. She did exaggerate stuff, but some of it wasn't entirely untrue. Like there were nude pictures of her. Supposedly her mother took the nude pictures so that she could then paint them, but she never actually painted anything. So mother was a little sketchy, and she ended up sleeping in her mother's bed a lot. So there was something definitely wrong with her. I don't know if it's because she was, drinking a heck of a lot, or whether this was her last child. This was her last child, and she was, who knows? But something's that the whole thing at that house was just a little uncomfortable, shall we say? And then she was just bouncing everywhere. Cannot tolerate being alone. Well, she claimed she wanted to be alone, but then she always ran off with somebody. She wanted an intense relationship. If it wasn't with her parents, it had to be with somebody. Frequent feelings of emptiness. She wrote about that. Her writing, if you read her writing, it's very I always think of Romeo and Juliet when I read her writing, Shakespearean type stuff. It's like a lot, very emotional, but also in the same strange way, very realistic. So it's a kind of weird combination of things. She's not totally she doesn't totally not understand herself, but she's in this constant struggle, this Shakespearean struggle with her own mind. Frequent displays of inappropriate anger, impulsive and risky behavior. She definitely went off to Europe. She did drugs. She ran around. Substance abuse. She definitely had substance abuse. Repeated crises and acts of self-harm. She had a huge history of self-harm, of poking herself with pins and doing other kinds of self-harm to herself. Distorted sense of self. I don't know. She would claim she was like going off to new people in the IRA, and some of it was to manipulate people, but other times I don't think she knew who she was. And I think she both loved and hated her parents. That, again, back and forth. They controlled the heck out of her, and this seems to be true. She wanted freedom from them, but she also didn't know how to be free from them. So when Jens came along, he was her chance for freedom. He became obsessed with her. He's got more of a stalker personality. He became obsessed with her neediness for him. And he was kind of, got to look at, now take a look at him for a second. Picture of him. That's them. Okay. As somebody once said, a mother once said, he's a real little shit. And he really is. But he was also a goofy looking dude, and he was very brilliant, but he wasn't super popular with the girls. And suddenly he had this fairly decent looking woman, high school girl who was willing to go with him. And so they formed that relationship really intensely. He got somebody and she got somebody. And to each one of them, they needed each other for different reasons. I think she's borderline personality disorder. I don't think she was 100% psychopathic, and that she did exhibit remorse. She did exhibit guilt. She told the truth. She went to prison. She told them she felt responsible for what happened to her parents. That although she didn't commit the crime, she did say a bunch of things, which she said, well, that probably was, let me see if I can find some of the things she said. Hold on a second, let me find it. Okay. So this was the viewpoint of his side. a cunning, manipulative, unstable. She was definitely unstable. A femme fatale who manipulated a naive young man into murder. So he was going to present himself as a dupe. I don't agree with that. And I know it's going to seem very strange to you because usually I would agree with something like that. I say, yeah, she because I've talked about guys who are adults. Sometimes when you have Munchausen syndrome by proxy people, and I looked to see if she was Munchausen syndrome because she did make up stories that she was raped and stuff like that. So it could be Munchausen syndrome-like. But she didn't, a woman like that who marries a guy and then kills off her babies, I call the guy adult. Sherry Papini, her husband was adult. As long as he got his needs met, he sort of turned a blind eye or just believed everything she said. This is not Jens at all. I mean, he was not that idiotic. He was a brilliant guy who understood things. He understood she was a massively needy human being. And she had said this. They asked her, she said, "I'm afraid, sir, that it was a fantasy of mine for many years that my parents would die." So you fantasized their death for many years. I fantasized that they would be out of my life. By death, it didn't matter how. I think because of the massive amount of control that they had over her, and she pointed out, there was something else that's interesting pointed out by the family, that they had very high standards for her, and she didn't feel she could meet those high standards because he was such a brilliant businessman and they'd been so successful. And the pressure was on her. Supposedly her parents said, well, our other kids didn't do so great, but you're going to be the one who does the right thing. And she felt so much pressure to be this person that she didn't feel she could, she was insecure as heck. She couldn't accomplish that. So now the problem was she's both being controlled and she both feels she can't live up to their expectations. Now, many people wish certain people were out of their lives because it takes the pressure off. If they would just, if they just got in a car accident, she could wake up one day and she could feel bad their parents died in a car accident, but she doesn't have to deal with them anymore. No longer will there be the pressure or the control. It's gone. Problem is they're not dying off. So what do you do when you wish they would go away, but they don't go away and the pressure continues? Now, let me see if this is the next thing. Okay. So you talk to your, let's see what is it. Okay. So you talk to your boyfriend. So here comes along Jens. Jens came from, let me show you Jens for a minute here. So Jens comes from he hated his parents. He really did. He hated his parents. He has nothing nice to say about either one of them. He would like to see them die, but he just didn't bother with them. But he was a lot of people thought he was a pretty nasty piece of work. A real little shit. Just not a really nice guy. And now he's hooked up with Elizabeth. And he knows she too doesn't like her parents. That she wishes she could be free. And he wants to, he's a stalker type. He wants her in his life. And the parents do keep getting in the way. The parents keep trying to control her and give her opportunities. They weren't actually totally bad parents. They were like, okay, you want to go do this in Europe? We will set you up. They were actually trying to save her in a way. They wanted her to be successful and they were controlling her in order for her to be successful, because if she's always been borderline personality disorder from way back when, she probably was a handful. And she'd already run away and run off to Europe and done all kinds of stupid crap and been in drugs. They were probably thinking, if we can just control her, we can save her. She felt suffocated by that control, but she also still had opportunities, and she still was her parents' daughter. He's thinking, if those parents aren't around, she wishes they'd go away. And if I could help her make them go away, she's mine. She will be mine. She won't have them to depend on anymore. It'll just be me. So I will free her of those parents, and then I will be her one and only. Yeah. And one of the, let's see if I can find what this psychiatrist said. Hold on a second. I don't know where it is. Okay, here it is. It is likely that Mr. Soering did not kill the Hansons out of act of love. And certainly not at Ms. Hayson's command, but rather as a means of retaining control over Ms. Haysom. This was the Dr. Showalter who said this, and I agree. I think that he hated his own parents. He didn't care. This man has never shown remorse anywhere. This man exhibits psychopathy, 100%. And still does. All he does is manipulate people, say he's innocent, shows no remorse for the murders, not even concern for the murders, not anything. He hates Elizabeth now, so just says she did it. And he's been victimized by everybody. He is arrogant. He's got all the signs of psychopathy. I believe that what happened when these two met was that he saw in her a chance for him to be a man. She paid attention to him. So he did become obsessive, like some psychopathic stalkers are. They're obsessive. They want that person because that person is telling them they're somebody. They got that grandiose feeling around them. It's like, see, now I'm a real person. And she talks about how she wishes her parents were out of her life. Now, so here comes who is controlling whom. So is it that she is a femme fatale who has brought him under her control like a little spider, and she's making him kill her parents so she can be free? Or did he see a woman who was unstable, who was struggling with her parents, and he hated his parents anyway, and he's like encouraging her, yeah, it is bad for you. Your parents are terrible. And he actually talked about how he could kill them. This was before the murders. Your parents are terrible. You poor thing, you. And then I can help you. I can get rid of them for you. Now, does that make him the controller in the folie à deux? And so he's dominant actually, and she's not. And when we look back at the other crime with the two girls, even though the girl's mother got murdered, I can think that her friend was the controlling factor in that. She helped kill off her friend's mother because it gave her control. He helped kill off her parents because it controlled her. Because he knew she was damaged goods. He knew she wasn't functioning well. And yes, she told lies. Yes, she, there were things that she did which, aren't exactly, things you want to be proud of. But this guy, I think knew what he was doing. And I think he egged her along, and they wrote these letters back and forth. And then he saved them all because they say is totally a stalker type. And when they ran away, he came up with all the kind of crimes they could do to survive. He's not a dummy. This guy had a really high IQ. And I think he wanted to control her. He wanted to keep her. That was his woman, and he was going to damn well keep her. And keeping her made him a bigger man. That's why he could finally have real sex with her after he killed off her parents. And so finally, when they caught up and he confessed, then she said, well, yeah, she confessed too, but she confessed to, hey, it's my fault because I told him my parents are dead. And now the question will come. Now here's the next question. All right. When they set up this thing from Washington, D.C. to Virginia, the fake tickets, drive to Washington in a rental car, to buy the movie tickets, for one of them to stay. And I do believe one of them stayed and one of them went. I don't believe two of them were at the crime scene, although I say it is possible. But if they were both at the crime scene, I don't think she went. I think she would have left the house, smoked cigarettes, and he would have killed them and then come back out. And that would have been that. Again, that she did not commit the actual murders. However, did she know he was going to murder them? And this is a big issue. She at some points claimed she did not think he was going to actually kill them. That although in her head, because if you read some of her writing, she's in a half fantasy world a lot of times. She writes a bunch of now he writes a bunch of stuff. He thinks he's a brilliant writer. He's a horrible writer, by the way. He writes a whole bunch of crap which you would never want to read. He just thinks he's brilliant, but he's like the worst, what they call purple prose, just dreadful. Her stuff is more like real, but she's definitely fantasizes about things. And the question comes down to this. Did she wish her parents were dead? Did she fantasize about it? And he's like, yeah, I could do it. I could do it. And they go up to DC, and he goes, yeah, I'll go down there. And now he claims he went down there and talked to them. Let me tell you this was another story of his. Let me see if I can find the extra story. Not that one. Let's see, where is it? I got to find it. Hold on a second. It's somewhere here. Somewhere. Crap. Hold on a sec. Where is it? I got to flip through here. Oh, here we go. Soering wanted to portray the killings of the Haysoms not as a planned assassination, but rather an impulsive result of alcohol and high emotion. Now, think about this. Remember when he said he went there to talk? He was in there talking to them, and then they told him he was a bad dude, and they didn't want him. He lost his mind and killed them. See, now he's claiming it wasn't premeditated, that he went to talk to them. Now, I don't know whether when they planned for him to go down there, it certainly looks like they're setting up an alibi. And he's saying, I'm going to go down to talk to them, but it doesn't turn out well. I can take care of them. Now, so he says that, and they go through this whole thing of setting up an alibi. That he goes down to talk to them. Did she specifically know he was going to kill them? Or did she think he was going to talk to them, and if it worked out well, he'd come back? Did she just not want to think? Was she in that kind of state where, with all her fantasy things going around, she's playing these games, and he says he's going to do that, and she's whatever, and she really know what he was going to do? Maybe she sort of hoped, maybe she didn't hope. You know what I'm saying? It's like, where is she at in that? Did she specifically say, this is my honey-do list. I want a burrito from Taco Bell, kill mom and dad. Did she actually say this? Or did she say, I want a burrito from Taco Bell, and let's see what happens. I just don't know what you're going to do. And she's like, not really thinking. She said she didn't really think he would do it because he's a wimpy looking dude. She said she was surprised that he did. So did she tell him specifically, I expect you to kill mom and dad. Don't come back without killing mom and dad. Or did he say, oh, okay, I could kill mom and dad if it doesn't work out well? And she's like, okay, fine. I don't know. She did use drugs. She claimed heroin at that point up there in DC. I don't know if that's true. Supposedly she smoked a lot of weed. She did pills. She did do speed. I don't know what condition she was in. I really do not know. And I don't know that the stories she tells are true. She does exaggerate, and she does. I'm not saying she's always telling the truth. She's not. I don't know what her brain was under the influence. So when he got in that vehicle and went south, whether she knew, you are going to kill my parents. She had told him, you're going to kill my parents. I don't think that necessarily is true. So I am, quite frankly, surprised that she got as high a sentence as she got. I think she got 45 years for each one of the murders, because she was like essentially ordered a hit. And so she was going to be in prison for life. I think that was kind of extreme, because she didn't commit the homicides. She didn't hire somebody with money. There was no actual proof of exactly what she said to him. I'm surprised she didn't get like 15 years. And then he goes to prison for life because he actually stabbed him up. So I am surprised that she got as long as she did. I think it was actually kind of unfair. So I know y'all are probably surprised that I'm not putting her as the controller of this crime. I think he's in control. I think he's a psychopath, and she's borderline personality disorder. She's a mess. She's a flaming mess. She expresses a lot of stuff. She's desperate. She's banging all over the place. And he comes in and goes, I can play that pinball game. And he gets in there with her, and he encourages her. And this is the way he's going to control her forever. He's going to take these two people out. And he did it cold-bloodedly. I mean, it was a very cold-blooded murder. I don't think it was any like, oh, accidentally, they pissed me off. So I think everything that he says they said in the house, I think is a big fat lie. I think he's just blaming the victims. I think he went there to kill them. He had a purpose. He committed the crime in a very brutal way. And then he came back and said, look, I've done the deed. And I don't know whether she went, oh, good, or she went, really? You what? I didn't really expect you to do it. I don't know where she's at. I don't know that she knew where she was at. But I think he knew exactly where he was at. Now, let me read you the psychiatrist's report on him, because it really, I think, was so freaking annoying. The psychiatrist said here that he believed he was suffering from an abnormality of the mind, really, rising from the disease of the mind as to substantially impair his mental responsibility for his acts. Were he to be tried for the homicides in England, I would be prepared to give evidence that he suffered from diminished responsibility in terms of Section 2 of the Homicide Act 1957, and that he would therefore be liable to conviction for manslaughter rather than murder. This is from Hamilton. So what he's saying is he believed in the folie à deux. He believed that she so controlled his mind that he had diminished responsibility, and therefore he didn't premeditatedly plan to kill these two people, and wouldn't have done so without her messing his mind up to the point where when he got there, he just lost his mind because she controlled it. So he was supposed to get, that guy said he should get manslaughter. He's saying he's not a psychopath. I think she had diminished responsibility. I think her diminishment was the fact that she was so all over the place and such a basket case that he came in and controlled her to the point where she was willing to go along with anything that would get her parents out of her life and not have to deal with them. And whatever he said, he's going to do that. Okay, fine, whatever. And this will be cool. We're going off in the sunset together. I think she had more likely diminished responsibility, and she didn't hold the dang knife. She didn't actually stab them to death. He drove 4 hours from DC to Virginia. He had a 4-hour drive to think, should I be doing this? He brought a knife to the scene because it was not found there, and he never confessed. I didn't have a knife. He brought a knife. He drove all the way down there. 4 hours, he had a chance to change his mind. He brought a knife to the scene. He got himself entered into the house. He cut 2 people's throats, stabbed them multiple times, made sure they were dead, cleaned up afterwards, or tried to clean up after the scene, had a alibi set up, drove all the way back, and continued on. And when the police came and asked her for DNA, fingerprints and all that stuff, she gave them. He refused. And by the time they came after him, he bolted the country and said, I'm not going to cooperate. And then he confessed 4 times. So I'm going to say, in my opinion, that guy exhibits psychopathy. She exhibits borderline personality disorder. I believe in this folie à deux that he controlled the actual crime that went down. He was actually the one that was the catalyst. Now, she may have said crap. I'm not saying she didn't say she wished her parents weren't in her life. I'm not saying all that. But he knew what her issue was, and he took advantage of her so that he could control her forever. In the Parker Hume case, go watch my thing on that. Parker Hume worked that out with Parker to kill her mother because Hume wanted Parker in her life forever. She wanted to have control of Parker. So in both cases, I see the person who is not the child of the murdered victim or victims being the controller. And most people think it's always the other way around. It's like, I want my parents dead. I'm going to get my girlfriend or my boyfriend to come in and kill them for me. I don't think that's often true. I think it's often the other way around. And so that may be controversial to many, but I think in a folie à deux, I think he was actually the dominant one, and she was swirled around in the whole thing. So I say that may be controversial, and I know most people think she was a femme fatale. I don't believe so, and I don't believe that that Parker was the controlling force in the Hume Parker thing either. I think it was Hume. And interesting enough, as I pointed out, after the crimes were committed, Parker, after her mother was killed, she went to prison, then she went into seclusion, and she expressed great guilt and remorse and did not go public. She did the same thing. She told the police, right? She accepted her crime. She accepted her part in the crime. She accepted the life sentence. She didn't complain about it. She accepted it. She went to prison. She did her best there. She kept quiet and leads a quiet life. And what did Hume do? She never felt any remorse or guilt, and she went on to write books under the name of Anne Perry and was having a happy old life. And he is now a celebrity and still says he's not guilty of a dang thing. That he was the victim, and has no remorse or guilt. So we see the same thing go down. So look at your comments now, because there's like 200 of them. It's a fascinating case, fascinating. But I'm going to also recommend Check out the Netflix documentary. It's interesting because they have so much of the court case stuff there. So you can see them talking to each other. And I want you to check out the book. Let me put that up on the screen again, because he has got the book and his web pages, tremendous amount of information, and way more than I'm giving you here. Because, I'm just doing profiling part. I'm telling you how I think. I'm not giving you the whole story and every single detail, because that would take an entire 50-part series, and I'm not doing it. But check out Andrew's book, and check out any link below I put to Andrew, because he's got a lot of information there, and I think he's pretty right on the money. And he said that Parent Andrew actually said that Jens just calls him like this guy, this creepy guy. He won't give him any credibility. I wonder why. All right, so let me go to the bottom. I'm going back up now. Goodness gracious. Let's see. Wow, what's this? Benny Thompson started out on one side, and Pat brought me to the dark side. What fascinated me most is that only two of them know the real truth. That is always going to be true, except that the evidence shows that he was in there killing them, not her. That I don't think there's a shred of evidence that she killed her parents. She may have been, part of the reason they were killed, but she did not kill her parents. This is the murderer. He's a double murderer. End of story. Apparently, this is one of the reasons why I think Andrew is so frustrated. Andrew he's also German. So, the Germans seem to really adore Jens. Yeah. And I think it's because, here's a German guy comes to America, and oh my goodness, the American girl, the femme fatale, takes advantage of this poor little innocent guy. He's such a goofy little dude. And and he's played that part perfectly. He has absolutely played that so much. But that's it. They think he's innocent, and they think that, he was this innocent little boy who came over, and she just took advantage of him. Morph says, I think Pat is right, because Elizabeth had not an easy life in her point of view, and met the guy that promised her to get rid of her parents. And I really think that's true. And I'm not saying it's right, mind you. Borderline personality has a high level of narcissism rolled in there too. Okay. But if you actually read about her life, it's a disaster. I mean, a disaster. His life was more on track. He may not have been happy about his life. He wanted to be greater than he was. He hated his father for being a stuffy guy, and he wanted to be cooler than that. And after he killed her parents, he was thinking about becoming like a mercenary or a sniper. And he was like, really, he actually wanted to kill the detective on the case. I mean, this guy, he did not have an issue. When he killed off her parents, it seems like it built him up. It made him feel like a true man. And he was willing to do it again. He enjoyed it. There was never anything he ever said, even in his confessions, that he only felt bad about the dog he thought he hit. But even in his confessions, he didn't say, I lost my mind and I killed him and I was horrified by what I did and I just felt so bad. He never said that. And afterwards, he seemed to gloat about his killings and gloat about killing again and want to kill again. That's a psychopath. She didn't seem to have that great need to go off and kill the detectives and do more damage or anything. She wasn't a Karla Homolka. She was free. And for that time that they ran around the world together, she may have had that moment where she thought, oh, it is better that he killed my parents. Life is better. I'm not saying she shouldn't have gone to prison. I'm not saying that. I think 15 years might have been reasonable. I think a life sentence for her was not reasonable. I find that interesting, because usually I'm big on life sentences. But since she didn't have it in writing, she didn't pay him money, she didn't exactly tell him he had to kill them or she wouldn't be with him, although people claim that's, I won't be with you if you don't kill my parents. That was never actually said that I saw. Maybe he thought, well, if I don't kill them, she won't be with me because they'll take her away from me. I think he thought that. I think he thought, they're in my way. Serial killers, by the way. Well, no, take that back, not serial killers. My favorite line for psychopaths is always been this line. And I made this line up, so it's mine. I'm going to coin it. Psychopath, this is the way he thinks. You're either useful or you're in the way. Her parents were in the way of what he wanted to achieve. They were in her way too, by the way. She wanted freedom. So they were actually in the way of both of them. But because they were in his way, if he could get rid of them, he could have what he wanted, which was her. So, folie on. Well, one could go there. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you. I think that's a comment toward me, but it may not be. Oh my goodness. Let me look back now. Why would you bring a knife to an ice cream party? Well, some people like to eat ice cream with a knife. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of issues over where the knife was bought, when it was bought, whether there's a butterfly knife, whether it was a steak knife. And that's, I say, that's a whole nother show, which I'm never going to do. Joe says they both look like psychopaths to me, albeit of a very different brands. Well, as I point out, Joe, there is that continuum, the narcissism continuum. And I don't go as clear, I don't do all the charts like everybody likes to do charts and tick off boxes. So it's absolute, you're there or you're there, I can't take him out of this guy I can't take out of the psychopath box. Okay. I can't, because then the number one issue is he's got very grandiose thinking. He treats people as they're useful or in the way. He does lies like crazy, not just some minor stuff just to manipulate a little bit, but he's lying like for the last God knows how many years. He changes his stories and lies like a dog. No remorse and no guilt. Those are two of the biggest to me. No remorse and no guilt means you have zero empathy. This guy has zero empathy. He didn't have any zero. I don't think he ever had any empathy for Elizabeth either. He had only empathy for himself. I want the girl to stay with me. I don't care what she really wants, but if she wants something I can get or take care of for her, then she'll be mine. That's not real empathy. That's manipulation. So I think he fits the bill for psychopathy. Elizabeth, because of her guilt and her remorse, and I believe at this time, there was no reason for her. First of all, she confessed fully and accepted a way longer sentence than she should have, and didn't fight it, and has ever since shown remorse and regret and guilt. And it's not the fake stuff that you see serial killers do. I'm really sorry I killed your loved one and raped her and cut all her arms off. It's like, sorry about that. Not that kind of fakey crap they say in court so they can get a lower sentence. She did not do that. She truly showed remorse and regret and guilt, and she hasn't been in the public eye. She's not promoting herself. She doesn't seem to have grandiose thinking at all. She did, she fabricates some stuff. She changed stories. She exaggerated, which is a lot of people by borderline personality do that. So there's a level of narcissism in there, but I don't see the level of psychopathy I see with this character. Yeah, that it's totally different. And there's not that I often say, when women kill off their kids and they're given a free run, so, and people go, oh, you're always on the guy's side, you're never on the female side, and you're just saying women. I'm like, it's because for a woman to wake up one day and kill her children off, there's got to be some really bad level of psychopathy rolling behind that. And it's the same for male or female. I just don't see it in this case. I don't see her. All of her life is such a mess and is so borderline personality disorder. But yes, it's not totally psychopathic and has a higher level of narcissism than healthy stuff but she was a very confused basket case. I mean, she really was. She was a mess, and she seems like she actually improved in prison. Of course, he improved too, because he became, but he became a celebrity. He was all about himself. He learned how to reach out to people better and got older and more mature. She just seemed to maybe not having, even though the prison had control over her, maybe she didn't have to fight with the parents anymore or to grasp for those relationships. Maybe somehow it settled her. I don't know. So I would tend to think that she's not quite that level of psychopathy as him. Oh, well, if he got paid by Netflix, which annoys the living hell out of me, And I hear that Rex Herman's wife, the Gilgo Beach suspect, she's getting paid a crap load of money to be in a Netflix documentary. And here's what really annoys me, and this is something I say as an expert. You know how many documentary people call me up and say, we'd love you to be in our documentary? And I say, what are you paying? And they go, oh, we don't have a budget to pay anybody. So you don't pay an expert in the field who's been out here for 30 years, who's bringing their expertise and is giving their time and their name to your show. You don't have any budget for that. But you'll pay this piece of crap a ton of money because you want him in your show. So you're lying dogs. Documentary people lie that they don't have the money. They just don't want to pay if they don't have to. But sometimes when they have to fight to get that person in the show, they will fork out. Dr. Phil, same thing. Oh, we don't pay anybody. I've done Dr. Phil only once because I can't stand the guy and would never do a show again. I didn't get paid to do that. I got to be on the show, But he paid some other people like, let's see, the Anthonys maybe. He'd pay them to be on his show. So it's just sickening that, sometimes murderers do make money off of people. So now he's in Germany, so I guess he can make all the money he wants on Netflix. So let's see. Linda says, Elizabeth made Jens feel like he would be her savior and get her away from the parents. She manipulated him every way and got her wish when he murdered him. Or did she? Or did he also make her feel like he would be her savior and he would help her? See, so this is where it gets very confusing. So I say, this is where the femme fatale. Oh, if you're going to be my savior, if you're killing my parents, all right. So you go and kill somebody's parents because your girlfriend asked you to. You have to. If you do that, you're probably a psychopath. And the question is, in all their writings back and forth, how much did he infer to her that I will be your savior? I can be your savior. Say it gets very murky there. But as I say, I don't buy this thing that he was just a total dolt and just was so in love with her he'd do anything for her. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. I think he was very cognizant of what he was doing, and I think he wanted to control her. And this was the thing that would get 100% control of her, and it was true. It did until they got arrested. So, but I see the understanding the other way. I mean, that's why I think I think more people tend to think that she was the femme fatale that was controlling him, and he just fell so in love with her that he'd do anything for her. And that's what the same thing with the Parker Hume thing. It was the concept was the same thing that Hume was in love with Parker, and when Parker's mother wouldn't let her go, Parker wanted her mother out of the way, so Hume helped. But I've always found Hume and this guy to be much more controlling than people believe. And that there's a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes in these kind of scenarios. And he was a lot more put together than she was. She was a mess. He was not a drug user. He was not falling apart. He was just, she was a person who was extremely needy. And sometimes what guys do, or what anybody does, who likes to control people, is they find the needy person, because a needy person needs them so much that they can do all those things for that needy person. And it gives them a feeling of power, that they can do things. And are they sort of manipulated by the needy person in a sense? Yes. I knew a guy, and he had been alone all his life. I'll call him John. And he never gotten married. And he met when he had just retired. And he met a woman who was a masseuse. Now, she theoretically was not a fake masseuse, like a hooker, shall we say. She wasn't a sex work that I know of, but she did massage work. And so she'd moved to the area, and she wanted to get her own massage studio. Here came along the sucker. Now, she cozied up to him, and she was very needy. She didn't have a place to stay. She had broken up with somebody. Her kids were a mess. She had two kids that were messed up. One had a boyfriend that was a mess. And she met him, and he immediately thought he was going to be her savior. Now, did she present that she was needy? Yes, she did. this guy who never had a woman pay attention to him because he wasn't that kind of guy. Believe me, this guy is not exactly a guy that gets women throwing themselves at him. And neither was this guy I'll call John. And so you're so thrilled that this girl paid attention to him. He ended up getting her the massage studio. He ended up moving her into the house. Then she wanted to move down to Florida. He moved down to Florida. He married her. He paid for this and that. She dumped him. He moved back to Minnesota. Her kids ended up living with him. She was gone, but he was living with the kids. They soaked him for a new car. They didn't pay rent. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I remember somebody asked me, I said, well, this guy's an idiot. Why is he doing this? And I said, because he's lonely. He also is needy. And by doing all these things, this guy feels important. You know, he's 60 years old, doesn't have anybody in his life. He's just, just sitting around. And suddenly he had this woman having sex with him, and he was getting her massage place, and he was helping her get her business going, and he was helping her kids. And he did all these things because it made him feel like a man. So who's manipulating whom? Was she just totally manipulating him? Or was he also controlling her? If I do this for you, you'll stay with me. If I do this for you, you'll have sex with me. If I do this for your kids, which side is it? So we can always go there. Just in the long run, this guy committed a double homicide. She did not. So let's say, and that's one way to look at it. He manipulated her, gave her the chance to get rid of her parents. Had he not come along, would her parents be dead? We have to look at it that way too. Would she have killed her parents? Would she herself have taken a gun to them or a knife to them? If the answer is no, and he came along and was the one who could do it, parents wouldn't be dead except for him. So it's an interesting dilemma. You know, psychopaths don't usually do extreme favors for others. So were willing to say he imagined his own parents as the victims. Very interesting that you say that. I like that you say that. Okay, Joe. Yes. First of all, he's not doing her a favor. This is where we get that thing again. Was he doing her a favor, or was he doing himself a favor? By killing the parents, he gets the girl. That's doing himself a favor. The parents were in the way of him having the girl forever because the parents kept interfering, saying, we're going to we want her to go on vacation with us, and then you can't come. We want her to go, I think she was supposed to go, I forgot she was supposed to go to some other country and do an internship there for a year. And guess who's not going to go? Him. The parents kept trying to put her on the path straight and narrow, give her opportunities that didn't include this creepy dude. And he knew the parents were in his way because once the parents were gone, he and she could go off into the sunset. So he wanted those parents gone. All right. So he wasn't doing her a favor. He was doing himself a favor. But when he was killing them, did he think about killing it that they were representing his parents, which is why I could kill them with so much rage, because he hardly knew them. And I think there's a point to that. I do. He didn't like his own parents. I think he didn't like the concept of the parents ruining their lives, that, you know, in spite of the fact that they were paying for half of their crap, that they had a say in their lives. He was a little shit. I mean, I think that was the best statement made about him. And so, yes, I think when he was killing them, he was killing his own parents as well in his own mind. I think they got a kick out of that. And that's why, again, there's no remorse in him at all. So, but I think he did himself a favor by killing them, not just her a favor. Well, thank you, Lila. It's you know, I say it's an interesting, it's that thing. It's kind of on the edge, you know what I mean? So it's hard. It's not like you can absolutely say, all right. So I see where people are going on either side. I just lean toward the side that he actually, in that folie à deux, as was Hume, the ones that were willing to kill some totally innocent people that they didn't even hardly know, that weren't the people controlling their lives forever and ever and ever. It was just recent that they were willing to kill off that person just so they could have what they wanted, which was their lover. That's just kind of where I thought. Benny says, actually, I started thinking she was the puppet master, but it seems evident that Jens is the real psychopath who is just using her. There's a mix. I mean, it's not that she was using him to some extent. I mean, because she wanted a relationship. She wanted somebody to pay attention to her too. I mean, that's also borderline personality disorder, desperation to have person pay attention. So we know no relationship is one-sided. I mean, that doesn't happen. When you get married to somebody, you're in a dating relationship, both of you want something, or it's not like, oh, I just don't want a dang thing. No, come on now. We want something in a relationship. And so we all have needs and wants. Totally. The question comes down to is when that line is crossed or pushed to one side, that we start seeing things get out of hand. So yeah, I think that she when she found a guy who really was into her, and he stalked the living crap out of her, by the way. He wanted her with him all the time. And she had sometimes tried to escape from him because he was obsessive, but she was also thrilled in a way because she was being paid attention to. She finally had somebody who wanted her. And did that give her the safety ground to say that she wanted her parents out of her life and so she could be with him? Sure. But did he also realize that she had a contentious relationship with her parents and the parents were getting in the way? And so he egged that on? Very likely. In the long run, I don't see an absolute point where she said, if you don't kill them, I'm gone tomorrow. I don't see that absoluteness. I don't see that she made him do it. I don't believe this crap that because he was in love with her, he had diminished ability to think for himself. I don't believe that at all, because he was very aggressive during the relationship. And a lot of times what he was aggressive about was stupid stuff. Like she won't go away for a skiing vacation with her parents for a couple of weeks. And he was very upset about that. It's like, why would you think she shouldn't be able to go with her parents for a couple of week vacation? What the heck? You're so afraid she won't come back. You're afraid of what the parents are going to say to her. You just think that she shouldn't be with anybody else but you. I call that controlling. So he's like, he's an obsessive, controlling stalker type of psychopath. And yet she's supposedly the puppet master. So I'm like, I'm going to say it leans more his direction. Let's see what else. I'm trying to go back up here a little bit. Why do parents treat their children like trained seals? Well, I mean, as a parent, you do want to guide your child. And sometimes when children get off the path, you try to get them back on the path. You try to do what you can. And I don't know. I can't say that either one of their parents were appalling, except I would say his seemed strict but helpful, and hers seemed a little bit. I think there was. I see some issues with her growing up. Something was not right in that house, and the shunting off to boarding school at 10 years old is very young to go to boarding school. Now I know people do that in other certain places in the world, but there was a dysfunction in that household. I will say she had something was wrong with that whole household, and especially her mother. Something was wrong with her. So I don't know if her mother was Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a narcissist or a psychopath, and that affected Elizabeth's. And she just ended up in a very unstable situation, a very unstable mindset, and desperate. I found her like she was like a ball in a pinball machine, just desperately seeking love, desperately seeking whatever. And she just didn't ever seem to figure out where it was. I'm going to say when she's in prison, she seemed to do a whole lot better. So, yeah, that may be the control they had over her was freaking intense. It did appear that way. Of course, the other problem is when you have a child who's out of control, that looks like you're being controlled and you get them back into control. So these things are really difficult to figure out exactly, who's at fault where. I mean, you can point fingers all over the place, but there's that one line you can't cross, which is stabbing people to death with a knife. And you can't also planning a murder is not an okay thing either. So I do think, she was aware that he was either possibly going to harm her parents. She said at one point she was freaked out and thought maybe she should call her parents and warn them if that he might be coming down to do something to them. As one of her statements. So I can't say she's not responsible, and I think she should have gone to prison. There's not a problem with that. She was an accessory before the fact and an accessory after the fact. She helped hide it. She definitely knew he killed her parents, and she helped hide that. And I think she needed to go to prison for that. So I don't have a problem with her going 15, 20 years. I just found it odd that, without actually paying for him to kill the parents, absolutely putting the knife in his hands, that she got life, 45 years. And how he ended up getting out is kind of appalling to me. But he's making the most of it. He's having a great life now, and just pretty horrifying. And so annoying, because regardless of what one thinks of her, that guy's not innocent. Who takes news of their grown kids? Yeah, I thought in the beginning that she might be lying about that, but apparently she wasn't. It's one of those things. She was a teenager at that time. I don't know what kind of teenager. And, it was supposed to be artistic. Because originally some people said, well, maybe it was just a picture of baby, a nude baby, a naked baby. And those are cute pictures. And that's okay. You shouldn't be sharing them on the internet, probably, but they're cute. But when your kid gets to be a teenager, probably you should not take pictures of them without their clothes on. And I understand artists love to do nude work, and I have actually done artwork with charcoal of nudes, and I love doing nudes. It's really cool, the body shapes, and usually the more interesting the body shape. In other words, not perfect. The real perfect ones aren't as much fun to do, but you get somebody who's older, their skin is falling, you got bigger belly. It's actually more fun to do the charcoal and see how the human body is shaped, look at the muscles. And it's very interesting. It's great. As an artist, it's fun to do. But I don't think I'm going to do a nude of my daughter. It's just, that's creepy, man. Something off on that. And so, yes, that supposedly actually did happen. The rape thing in at 10 years old at the school is a little more questionable. So it was stated that perhaps it was just an exposure thing, but she did leave the school. Whether she was lying and made that up, which is 10 years old is pretty young to make that up. And the story was kind of horrifying. Or did the school just not want to deal with it? They didn't want to admit it. Her parents supposedly accused her of making it up, which maybe they were used to her making up stories, but then again, maybe it happened. So it's really hard to go back and prove any of these things. But all I can say was she had a tumultuous childhood, and she did do self-harm, a lot of self-harm, and that seems to be documented. She was a mess, and she did do drugs. So she was a mess. I tell you, a basket case. That's all I can say. And I think he took advantage of a basket case. He became obsessed with her, and he thought she was going to be his. And he was going to make damn well sure she was. So, but a strange combo it turns out to be. The folie à deux. Yes, that's correct. She pleaded as an accessory before the fact. Well, the thing is, she was an accessory after the fact too. So I'm not sure why that was thrown out of there. But she definitely. I think the bigger guilt was, or the bigger sentence came with the other one, because if you're helping plan the murder, it's worse than if you just protected a murderer. So, yeah. So I'd make a good nude model then. You might, Kelly. Would Jens still feel obsessive of Elizabeth after all this time? Well, I suppose he hates the hell out of her now. He hates her with a passion because she confessed. Well, first of all, he confessed before she confessed. So dude, you're the one who screwed it all up. You're the one who claimed you actually went and said you murdered them. So, but he was pissed off that she said the things she did. And so he hates her now. And then he claims she killed them, and he didn't have anything to do with it. Now he hates her because he confessed to the crime when it was her crime, and she didn't confess to murdering them. Yeah. Yeah. So supposedly hates her now. Um, oh Lord. Yeah. See that the answer. So I supposedly in Germany he's not allowed to say that she did it, but he's got all these other places to say that she did, and he's now one of the things I'll tell you psychopaths do very well is move on to the next game, because they can find a way to say, hey, in a way they're making those lemonade out of lemons. They're like, well, I got screwed on that one, but now I can manipulate people in a whole new way. And that's what he's doing. And now he's got, this whole following, and he's got all, I think you're innocent. Yeah. Yeah. And so, she so manipulated you. You're just so innocent. So he's got a whole fan club, and now he's doing extremely well. So yeah, he did spend a lot of his life in prison, which he definitely deserved. But now he's got his new platform. He surely does. So he surely does have that. All right. So there you go. That's what I think about this. There's so much in this case. It was very hard to even try to explain it. And again, if you really want to know more about it, you got to read the book. You got to go to the website. You got to, there's a ton of information that I have that I did not present because I say it's just way too much for a 2-hour show. But I just wanted you to understand the whole folie à deux thing and how it may not actually be the way people think it is. At least that's my view on it. That in this case, I think that the dominant one in the long run ends up being him. And in the other case, I think it ends up being Hume and not Parker. And we just always assume that if the person if their person's parent gets killed, they must be the controlling factor. Since they care more and they got somebody to kill them, they think they're controlling that person. But nobody ever wants to look at the fact that a person who's a messed up person, who has issues with their parents, why can't somebody come in and take advantage of that and say, hey, you're having problems with your parents, I'll take care of your parents for you. And they see a basket case and they go in and take control. But for some reason, we don't think that way. And I think that may be true more often than we think. So that's what I wanted you to understand in this particular case. Anyway, the hangout this week, if you're a patron, if you'd like to be one, click below on that description and on the Patreon box link there. Will be Wednesday at 7 p.m. because Thanksgiving is Thursday and I have no intention of spending Thursday here. And so that's going to be Wednesday at 7 p.m. And I'm also going to be out of town for a couple of days after Thanksgiving with the family. So I'll be doing another Sunday show. So I will see you on Wednesday and then on Sunday. And so I hope you enjoyed the show, and go check out all the information on it. It's truly fascinating, but that dude, not